Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selena Woodruff from Core Connection. And this week we are going to talk about mental health awareness in teens. So, really important topic. And the first thing we're going to probably start off with is differentiating between what's kind of just normal teen moodiness and warning signs is going to be kind of the main focus, because it's normal for your kid to come home upset because something big happened at school. What's not normal is if for the last month your kid has been coming home upset, or if they are just completely monotone, or if there are big changes, right? So everybody goes through, various moods and emotional changes. Those are kind of normal. And so we want to give you alerts on warning signs. And I know another big emphasis is, if there are warning signs, professional help. That's something that I'm sure we're going to hit on a lot, is that knowing when to seek professional help when it is warranted. So give me your guys' thoughts on mental health awareness for teens.
Yeah. And, just a disclaimer here that we're not going to be able to cover every potential sign or indication. The things that we share today will just be kind of a high level overview. And like Liz said, if you feel that there's anything serious going on, immediately seek help and don't put that off. It would be better to overdo this than underdo it, and just make sure that your child is getting the help that's necessary. But yeah, definitely a difference there, Liz. And, I had a bad day, or I'm feeling down today, versus, multiple days or an extended period of time, big changes, big mood swings. Those kinds of things are important to look at.
Yeah, or situational happenings, right? Like, a relationship ends of any type, or a friendship, or a friend moves, or maybe you get cut from a team, or you didn't make a team, or you have some of those things that we talked about last week, like failure and rejection, where your kiddo's probably going to feel down, and maybe even for a few days. That's pretty normal, and that's okay. And I think it's even pretty normal for them to maybe want a little bit of time to themselves. Like, I just need some time to hang out in my room and just process. That's fine. But if they're just wanting to spend all of their time in their room, or if they're completely isolating, or they're just completely shutting you out for this indefinite period of time, then you need to be concerned, because that is what you don't want. Isolation is the absolute wrong thing for teens in that instance, when there is something major going on.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't even understand what's going on. And that's why it's important for parents to be aware and to watch and recognize what's happening in their lives. And, so much of what we talk about and discuss here gets back to being able to communicate with your child, that connection, that regular connection and conversation that happens in healthy parent-teen relationships. You'll see that as a parent. You'll see those signs, and you'll be able to ask those questions and then go whatever direction, the answers to those questions dictate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also think that it's good to talk a little bit about kind of how depression and anxiety can be defined, right? So we just kind of talked about how we can have this situation where we feel depressed, or we feel down, or we feel this. Another important thing about anxiety is anxiety can actually be a very helpful emotion, because when we feel anxiety, it's motivation to do something, right? Anxiety is often saying, oh, I need to study for this test, or I need to get this done for a deadline. The problem is anxiety, if it builds too much, it becomes crippling. And that's when you run into it not being productive. So, if you've got a teen who is got maybe a big test coming up, or a big tryout, and they're feeling a little anxious, definitely don't negate those feelings, right? But know that it's okay. But if it comes to it and they completely freeze, or it's so crippling that they feel like they can't function and they can't focus, that's where you're looking for the warning signs. And so it can be a delicate balance. And I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on, how do you define that? Is it just going to be individual, or like where is that line between, we're just feeling that normal anxiety and we're in a crisis point?
Yeah, that's a good jumping off point here, I guess. And The difficulty in looking at emotions is that we all
Mm-hmm.
experience them a little bit different, and we express them differently. Anxiety comes out. Anxiety is, I actually think it's this like really cool emotion because
Yeah.
it comes out in so many different ways. And it is a change force, for getting us to do something differently. Some people experience physical pain. Some people experience just heavy levels of stress. Some people can't focus through it. It just depends. The same thing with depression. What does depression look like for you? Well, it just depends on that individual and how they experience that, and kind of what their natural responses are to that. Now, an easy way, I guess, to maybe look at anxiety and depression is like you said, when it starts to interfere with everyday functioning.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need to look at, moving into professional help or getting additional help. If we have anxiety that stops us from being able to get to school or to complete a test or other tasks that are in front of us, we need help when it debilitates us. Same thing with depression. If we can't work through it and even get out of bed, we've got a problem going on
Mm-hmm.
that could be alleviated from somebody with some professional training to assess and address those issues.
I love that, Liz, that you talked about how anxiety actually is a good emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we hear so much negative about anxiety. I'd love to change the narrative on that personally, because I think that too often we get afraid when we do have anxiety, and then it becomes debilitating when it doesn't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're like, oh no, I'm experiencing anxiety, or oh, I'm worried and I don't feel like I want to do this. And so then we think it's bad or wrong. And then it stops us from trying to do those things and accomplishing those things that we want to do. So we may become stuck just in the thought of that we have anxiety, if that makes any sense. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that if we can change that narrative, that like anxiety is great, it's actually a motivating factor and it helps us. We just need to not let it be in the driver's seat. It needs to not be the driving emotion that we have. So a technique that I teach my kids and others is that you're just like, hey, this is a bus and we've got all these emotions, but who's driving it? And you're like, hey, anxiety, of course you're going to come along. You're coming with me, because you're not going to get rid of that anxiety. It's going to be there. So hop in, come for the ride, help me out, but I'm the one driving this. So not trying to make that emotion go away,
Right.
but to be able to use it to help drive you and help you in what you're trying to accomplish also. And I realize and recognize that there is cases that it does become debilitating, and that you do need that help for that. When we can use anxiety to help us and drive us, it's going to be a way more useful emotion for us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Selena. We do often tend to want to remove uncomfortable emotions, and often we want to take a pill for it or whatever to eliminate those uncomfortable emotions from our lives, but that is not healthy. We need all emotions. And of course, like we keep saying, like if it's debilitating, either anxiety or depression or anything else, when it interferes with our capacity to function in life at a reasonable level, we certainly have to get help with that. And there's some things that can be done. And sometimes medication is necessary, and that's wonderful. But in general, we can take those emotions and learn how to use them to our benefit, and to recognize where we need to do something different. Even with depression, if we're feeling down or sad one day, that uncomfortable feeling can drive us to make a different choice. Well, I spent all day playing video games. Of course, I feel down today. I haven't done anything besides those video games. And so maybe I should do something different. Maybe it's an opportunity for me to go and connect with friends or family, or to get out and exercise and get some vitamin D, or to do some sort of grounding technique. All those things can be good for us, and that experience of sadness or downness can drive that in us to make those changes.
So we're channeling our emotions is what we're doing. And, and the goal here isn't to pretend emotions away, because bottling them up or burying them or trying to just ignore them isn't a helpful strategy either. We want to acknowledge the emotion. I am feeling this. This is information. My brain, my body is giving me information. What can I do with this information? How can I use this information to help either make a change or to do something that can alleviate it? So, if maybe you are feeling really stressed or you're feeling a lot of anxiety, what are your calming techniques? Right? What is your meditative practice? Meditation is something that is talked about a lot in the therapy world, because it's really a simple thing that can make a huge difference in your life. It's just having some sort of meditative technique that can just help recenter you and just kind of bring you back to more of a calm state of mind, right? Or if I am feeling just really down, okay, what's going on? Or what is something that I can do to self-soothe, right? Like, what is something that I can do to help give me a pick-me-up? And it's not that I'm going to just pretend the emotion away, but I can do something. And so doing something always feels better than doing nothing. And again, I want to acknowledge sometimes that can be the hardest thing to do. Sometimes doing is the hardest part. But if we can train ourselves and if we can find somebody to help give accountability or someone to help us manage, then, the doing, you'll get through it and you'll move through it. And sometimes with teens, it's as simple as, hey, let's go for a walk, or, let's go get some fresh air. I've got to go run this errand. Do you want to come with me? Just get out of the house, change a scene. Something different can really sometimes help lift a mood.
Yeah, and I refer to that as perspective, right? When we have all these things coming at us, and we look at our teenage children, and they often have a lot coming at them. There's the pressure to perform in school, in sports, in whatever extracurricular activities they're in. There's the relationship side of things, the social aspect of being a teenager, the social media side. There's just all these different pressures coming at them. And sometimes when they come too quickly at one time, then we're going to have this abrupt episode of anxiety or possibly depression. And so those methods that you talked about, the grounding, the meditation, those are a recentering or a resetting of kind of those emotions and getting a new perspective and just taking a step back and breathing and relaxing. And then that allows you to take on and tackle those experiences with a new set of eyes and with a little bit more calm in your body. And so teaching that to children can be difficult. And of course, like we always say on here, we're modeling, right? As parents, we can model that and teach that, and then utilize those tools to help them when they are having one of these difficult episodes in their lives.
Maybe too often we're trying to get rid of our negative emotion, trying to always feel happy. But the reality is we live in a life that is 50-50. I like to more say 80-20. I think our life's probably more happy and better most of the time. But let's just go with 50-50. So 50% we're feeling great and things are great, and 50% things aren't great. And so if we're always trying to make things great and happy and not feel negative emotion, then that's going to be a challenge and a struggle when we do have just the normal emotions that come with life. There's so much that plays into that environment, atmosphere, hormones, all of that stuff plays into that. And so if we can learn to practice to feel our emotions and get really good at practicing negative emotion, like this is the part that I feel sad. This is the part that I'm scared. This is the part of life that I have anxiety. So you have a test at school, like instead of trying to make it happy and great, like, okay, this is the part where I get really good at feeling those negative emotions that come with having a big test.
So what, Selena, what it sounds like what you're trying to do is, like you mentioned earlier with the analogy with the bus, is you're taking that information and you're using it, but you're in the driver's seat, right? So it's not that you can't kick the emotions off the bus. They're already on the bus with you. So you might as well just be in control to the best of your ability, right? And so, Jeremiah, going back to what you said about modeling, I think a great way that we can model behavior with our kids is when we express our emotions to them. So we can say things like, I am feeling stressed and overwhelmed right now. I need you to stop doing that. that's totally reasonable to do, right? I mean, or if maybe there's just, I don't know, a bunch of things going on at once and you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling anxious or like it's too much, it's modeling good behavior for your kids is saying, this is too much. I'm feeling overwhelmed and I feel like I might say or do something that I would regret, that might be unkind. I need to take 5 minutes and go sit in a room and be quiet for a second. And so again, it's just that shows kids like, oh, hey, mom feels emotions too. Mom, it gets to be too much for her and she knows she can handle it in a mature way, right? Like I can do the same thing. That makes sense.
Yeah, and we can always teach our kids breathing exercises and
Yeah.
meditation exercises and grounding exercises and just show them right along the way. And as part of that modeling, really what we're doing here and what we're talking about is building this emotional resilience where a child knows how to work within their own emotions to, yep, they're on the bus, but how are they behaving on the bus? Are we allowing that emotion to control and drive the bus wherever it wants to go? Or are we utilizing that emotion to, be the best version of ourselves or whatever that might be?
Yeah. I often tell my kids, it's okay to be angry. You can be mad. I don't mind. But what's not okay is X behavior that in the moment is not okay, right? Whether it's screaming or being disruptive or, throwing things or what have you. It's like anger is totally fine. We all get angry. It's how you handle the anger is what matters, or this behavior is not okay. And obviously that's a little bit different, right? I think if they're feeling depression, you're not going to say, well, it's okay to feel depressed, but you can't just sit there and mope. It's like, well, okay, that might not be helpful, but it's like, okay, I see you're sad and that's okay to be sad. Is there something I can do to help support you in this moment? Do you need something from me? Do we need to go do something? Do you need a minute to just sit and just be sad? Because I think that can be another helpful coping mechanism. And I think as parents, our instinct is to jump in and fix it. Oh, you're sad? Let's go get ice cream. Let's do something and let's fix it. Whereas sometimes what can be helpful is to just, this is hard. I get it. And do you want me just to sit here with you? Can I just sit here and be with you in this moment and help bear this burden? That can be really helpful for kids.
Yeah. The thing that we do as parents often, and it starts with young children, is we try to suppress the emotions because while that emotion is uncomfortable for them, it is also uncomfortable for us as parents to witness that emotion, the anger or the sadness. And so you're right. We want to fix it. We want to correct it. We want to make it all better. But I think that you're going in the right direction there, Liz, with allowing them to experience the emotion. You know what? Your boyfriend just broke up with you. Of course you're sad. Be sad. And what is that like for you? Where are you feeling that? Where are you, experiencing it? Or maybe they just don't want to talk about it. And we give them space. Hey, let me give you some space. Go cry. Like it's okay. And anger is another one. If we try and stop anger in our children, I promise you it's going to come back out and it's going to come out all sideways and crooked. And we're going to have hitting and yelling and screaming and fighting and all kinds of less pleasant things than even the anger. So yeah, of course you're angry. I'd be angry too that my, little brother stole my toy or broke my thing or colored on my paper or whatever the case is, right? Allowing them to recognize that, hey, you're allowed to have all of the emotions and you need to experience those. And here's how we do it in a healthy and safe manner.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the warning signs, but I want to make sure we hit kind of some of the big ones. So I've got a list here that I am going to read, and these are just common warning signs to look for. And I would say that a lot of these are if they're persistent, right? If these emotions or if these behaviors are persistent. So, for example, persistent sadness or irritability. I don't think you need to panic because your kid is irritable and it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon or in the evening and they're hungry, right? I think they're going to be irritable. But persistent sadness or irritability, loss of interest in activities, increased sensitivity or emotional outbursts. So those are some of the emotional signs that we want to look for if they are occurring on, longer than, I don't know, whatever you think would be normal for your child. So if, this breakup has happened and it's been 2 weeks and they're still not coping well and they still just can't seem to pull out of this funk, or if they got cut from a team or whatever happened, it may be time to seek some professional help and just get them someone to talk to so that they can find a better way to cope.
Yeah. And when we look at the one with loss of interest in activities, we're not talking about the normal ebbs and flows of desires of children. Your kid may have played basketball, 1 year, and the next year's like, I don't think I'm interested in that. That's not a warning sign that there's some sort of a mental health issue going on there. They're just maybe interested in something different. We're talking about like a significant loss in interest in any activities, especially something that they've been passionate about for a long period of time, and they suddenly don't want anything to do with that. Again, not like, hey, I'm growing out of playing with dolls and now I'm moving into more things that are more age normal for me.
Yeah.
That's okay. So just wanted to be a little bit clearer on that.
So behavioral signs. So withdrawing from friends and family. And again, this isn't just like, I'm feeling sad, I need to be alone for a little while. Totally normal. Give them space. Like, please give your kid space if they ask for it. But if this is just like persistent, like days where they won't talk to you or they're not talking to other friends, we've got a problem. Sudden changes in sleep or eating habits, declining academic performance. Okay, so those are some of the behavioral signs that we're looking at. Okay, so some of the physical signs: frequent headaches, stomach aches, or unexplained physical symptoms, fatigue and lack of motivation, or when normal stress turns into something more serious. So these are some of the warning signs, physical warning signs that we want to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, and again, that's not a complete list. That's just some of the things that we've come up with that are important to be aware of. Add your own. Really pay attention to the changes that are occurring with your children. That's what we're looking at. And when in doubt, have a conversation, talk to them, and see where they're at. And if it's not satisfying you, then maybe we take them to see somebody that can provide that professional level of help and care.
I don't think you should ever underestimate the intuition you have as a parent too. Your child, you've raised them, you're aware of them and their personality. Obviously, things change as they grow and they're trying to figure out life, but I would never underestimate those feelings that you have as a parent and follow through with those.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Selena. That intuition is key in so many different aspects of parenting.
And maybe you're wrong. Maybe it was nothing, or, and that's fine. But it's better to be wrong than to have something more serious happen. So another resource that all parents should be aware of is the 988 hotline. And it is referred to mostly as the suicide hotline, but several months ago, I did an episode with Monica Johnson, who is the director of the 988 crisis line. And it is a behavioral health crisis as well. So if you are feeling lost, or if your teen is doing things and you just don't know what to do and don't know how to get them help or where to turn, great resource. They don't have to be suicidal. They can be whatever you define as a crisis is considered a crisis, and they're going to be able to get you the resources that you need. So always a great option if you're just completely lost, right? I mean, especially if your kid is maybe refusing to go see a doctor, or if they're refusing help, they're going to be able to get you some good coaching tips to help you through that.
Yeah, utilize the resources that are out there. 988 is a phenomenal resource that will continue to grow and evolve. Mm-hmm. There are apps out there that are great. There's online resources. For a lot of individuals, those who have like health insurance, they'll have a number that you could call as well, where you could talk to somebody and get some direction and advice in these kinds of situations. So don't be afraid to use those resources. They're great.
Yeah. And, and those are, hopefully you can catch a problem before it gets to this crisis level. But often a crisis can come on quicker than we can anticipate it, or all of a sudden you can find yourself in a crisis. If you are ever in a crisis and you're like, I don't know what to do or how to help, 988 is a phenomenal resource. If maybe you're just starting to notice some of these early warning signs, like all of a sudden they're sleeping a lot, or they're starting to withdraw, or you're noticing more mood swings, that could just be puberty. right? Maybe you just bring it up and bring up have a conversation with them of, hey, I'm just noticing this. Tell me what's going on in your life right now. Tell me where you're at and tell me what you're feeling and what you think about this is really, I think, the best place to start with it.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Those conversations are critical, and also it's an opportunity to build connection with your child.
Yes.
It's really
yes,
cool.
It is. Yeah. So let's talk about encouraging open and judgment-free conversation, because there was this old school way of parenting where I think they would be like, well, life's tough, suck it up, buck up. And thankfully we're moving away from that. How can we help our kids to feel judgment-free? How can we help our kids to come to us and not feel like they're being judged?
I think our initial response to that, and where I would work personally for that, would be to check your own thoughts. So if your kid's coming to you and your thought is, this is a problem, or, oh no, this is huge, any of those, which they can be, they absolutely can be huge, big problems. But if that's what your thought is, I guarantee your response and your action towards them is going to come across in that way. So being able to check our own thoughts and see where we're operating from and what we're thinking is going to help us to have the reaction that we want when they come to us with those situations that they're struggling with.
Yeah. And on top of that, I think that a big key here is to be accepting and acknowledge what they're experiencing. Often we tend to dismiss as parents, no, that's not that way, or you shouldn't feel that way. Well, no, they do feel that way, and this is what they're experiencing. And so we want to avoid dismissing those experiences that they're having and feelings that they're having, so that we can come across as non-judgmental and improve that connection. Once again, the reality is if our kids come to us with some sort of an emotional struggle and we shut them down, that's a signal to them that mom and dad can't handle it, and they are not the person to share my emotions with. So I will try to hide it and keep that from them as much as I can. So definitely, allowing them to experience what they're experiencing and then working from that frame of reference.
Sometimes, too, we can inadvertently send that signal if we jump too quick to solution, right? Or if we jump too quick to fixing it and we don't spend enough time on the validation component, because validating kids' emotions, especially when they're the one opening up to us, is kind of key. If they come and say, somebody said something at lunch and I'm really upset about it and I really didn't like it, and it really bothers me, it really hurt my feelings. And if you say, well, just don't let it bother you, or choose to ignore it, right? Or if we jump too quick to solution, that can inadvertently be sending a message of, I can't handle that emotion, or I don't think your emotion is valid. And then they can get into this idea of shut down, or mom and dad are in a safe space. Whereas if we say, that sounds awful, I'm sorry that happened, tell me more, right? Or kind of open it up and spend some time in the uncomfortable emotion, or this emotion that you don't want.
Yeah, and I would even caution moving, after that, moving into the solution portion, but actually moving into an exploration portion of a conversation with your child.
Yeah.
That might look something like, well, what do you think you might do about that situation? What kind of ideas do you have to resolve this? So what we're teaching there is, again, emotional resilience, and allowing them to explore and go, I don't know. I don't know what to do. And they may have already thought about this and this and that, and they just want to talk. And so when we jump into solution or problem solving for our children, we take away their opportunity to explore it on their own. And then they become emotionally dependent and don't know how to, assess those emotions and figure out how to work through difficult circumstances or experiences.
When you ask questions like that, you're going to build their confidence, and they're going to likely have more confidence when they feel like you have that confidence in them. But those questions are speaking that you have confidence that they have the ability to figure out their problems for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing them that you believe in them, you believe in their abilities, and encouraging some of that self-reliance as we often like to help build in our kids. Okay, so I think in conclusion, it's important to stress that mental health is just important as physical health, right? So, we make sure that we try to do our best to make sure that our kids are getting a balanced diet or balanced nutrition and all of these things. And we make sure that they're healthy. We take them to the doctor. If they're sick and they need medicine, we make sure they get that. Their mental health is just as important because their brains are developing and they are developing pathways, neurological pathways that are going to set in motion for the way they think, feel, and believe for the rest of their life. And no, you're not screwing it up as a parent. I promise. You are probably doing much better than you think, but always be aware of your child and try to understand what's going on in their emotional world.
Yeah. Pay attention, be aware, develop that connection, have those conversations. And, the reality is you're going to make mistakes as a parent along the way. We talk about this. We beat that horse to death in this podcast. Yep. I know, but it's okay. And yes, they're developing these pathways and these ways of thinking and being, but they can be challenged and changed over time as well. And if you haven't done these things, it's not too late to start teaching your children about emotional resilience and how to handle these emotions. It's not too late to stop telling your kid to stop being angry or just buck up. And so what if you've done that? It's fine. Here are some tools and some resources and ways to make some different decisions moving forward. And it will have a profound effect on your children.
Yeah, we need to recognize that we're not going to have all the answers. We're not going to know everything our kid's going through. And we're not going to be able to help them through everything. Sometimes it's not our problem to solve. So just find that encouragement in being there to love and support your child. That's probably the most important thing that you can do.
Yep. Now go and check in with your kids. See how they're doing. It's a great opportunity. Yeah. Go do it today.
Absolutely. Good advice. Okay, so next week we are going to talk about how parents can manage their own emotion. This one can be tricky. Apparently, if your kid comes to you and says something crazy like, "Hey, I want to quit the football team," and you're like, "But wait a minute, you've been doing football for so many years, and you want to give up on this dream?" That might feel kind of freaky as a parent. So we're going to talk to you about managing your own emotions. And in the meantime, and we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.